Dear child of God, the story of Abraham and Sarah is one of the most inspiring narratives in the Bible. Their journey is a testament to faith, patience, and trust in the divine plan. As we explore their lives and the remarkable promises fulfilled, we find profound motivation and lessons that resonate through the ages. Let us delve into the extraordinary story of Abraham and Sarah, taking our wisdom and encouragement for our own life's journey. Abraham's story begins in the book of Genesis, where he is introduced as Abram. At this point in his life, Abram lived in the Ur of the Chaldeans. He was a man called by God, chosen for a divine purpose that would change the course of history. It is in this context that we first encounter the powerful message of faith, trust, and obedience. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, we read the pivotal moment when God calls Abram. The Lord has said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a big blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all people on earth will be blessed through you." This call marks the beginning of Abraham's incredible journey of faith. Imagine leaving your homeland, your people, and your family to embark on a journey to an unknown land, guided solely by the promise of God. This act of obedience speaks to the unwavering trust that Abraham placed in the divine call. Dear child of God, what this teaches us is the importance of being open to God's call in our own lives. It may not always come in a grand revelation, but in the quiet whispers of our hearts or through a series of events that lead us toward a specific path. Just as Abraham followed God's call, we too can find purpose, direction, and meaning in our lives just by listening to that inner call and trusting in the divine guidance. God's promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3 was twofold. First, God pledged to make Abram into a great nation. And second, God promised to bless him personally and make his name great. In this promise, we see a profound message of blessings and divine favor. For Abraham, the promise of becoming a great nation might have seemed baffling at that time. He and his wife Sarah were childless, and they were both advanced in age. Yet they chose to believe in the divine promise even when it appeared impossible. They trusted in the future that in human terms seemed unlikely. This unwavering faith and trust in the face of apparent impossibility is a testament to the power of faith and serves as an inspirational example for all believers like us. Dear child of God, we can also draw a valuable lesson from Abraham and Sarah's faith. Their story reminds us that God's promises are not limited by our circumstances or human limitations. Just as God promised to make Abraham a great nation despite his age and lack of children, we should trust that divine blessings can transcend our earthly constraints. Our faith in God's promises can propel us to overcome the obstacles, regardless of how insurmountable they may seem. Abraham and Sarah's journey was not without its trials and tests. One of the most significant tests came when they faced the reality of the childlessness. In a society where the ability to bear children was highly valued, Sarah's barrenness weighed heavily on her and Abraham. Despite God's promise, they remained childless for many years. At one point, Sarah, growing impatient, suggested that Abraham have a child with her maidservant Hagar. This decision led to the birth of Ismail, but it was not in accordance with God's plan. Eventually, God reaffirmed his promise to Abraham, stating that Sarah, though aged, would give birth to a son named Isaac. Dear child of God, the story of Abraham and Sarah teaches us a profound lesson in patience and waiting on God's timing. It is often in the waiting, the periods of apparent delay, or unfulfilled promises that our faith is truly tested. Just as Abraham and Sarah faced the challenge of waiting for the fulfillment of God's promise, we too encounter moments in our lives when patience becomes a vital virtue. These times of waiting can be difficult, but there are opportunities for us to exercise our faith, trust in God's plan, and persevere until His promises are realized. The ultimate fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham and Sarah was the birth of their son Isaac. However, it is essential to note the profound sense of humor in this part of the narrative. God's angel came to Abraham and Sarah to reaffirm the promise of Isaac. In response to this promise, Sarah, who was listening from the tent, laughed within herself, thinking, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure?" Genesis chapter 18, verse 12. Dear child of God, Sarah's laughter is a reflection of the skepticism that often plagues our faith. At times, we find it difficult to believe in the fulfillment of God's promises, especially when our circumstances seem contrary to those promises. Yet, God's response to Sarah's laughter was a gentle rebuke, asking, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" This question challenges us to examine our own doubts and recognize that in the grand scheme of God's plan, nothing is impossible. We must learn to let go of our skepticism and believe wholeheartedly in God's capacity to fulfill His promises. While the birth of Isaac was a fulfillment of God's promise, it was not the end of Abraham and Sarah's journey. They faced one final, profound test of their faith, the binding of Isaac. In Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 and 2, God called upon Abraham. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham," and he said, "Here I am." He said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." This was an extraordinary test. Abraham was asked to sacrifice his beloved son, the child of promise, on an altar. His faith and obedience were unwavering. As he prepared to sacrifice Isaac, an angel stopped him, providing a ram to sacrifice in Isaac's place. Dear child of God, the binding of Isaac teaches us a profound lesson about sacrifice and surrender. Just as Abraham was willing to offer his most cherished possession in obedience to God's command, we are reminded of the importance of surrendering our desires, our plans, and even our most precious possessions to the divine will. In doing so, we find that our faith is strengthened and we are better aligned with God's purpose for our lives. It is well with you, beloved. God bless you. Shalom.